Welcome back to the summer. Spirits are high, the sun is out, vibes are great. You can't beat it, especially here in a place like Texas. It gives people a chance to get outside, put some light clothes on, work up a sweat, and get active. What better way to do that than playing the sports we all love? Throwing a football, shooting some hoops, bouncing a volleyball around, kicking a soccer ball. No matter what you do, it doesn't really get old. Humans love sports, especially in America. It's a deep, embedded part of our everyday tradition and psychology. It's deep-rooted in our everyday lives, and we take every chance we get to participate in ourselves. Our love for sports also comes from watching it ourselves. After a long day's rest or a long day's work, there's nothing better than going back in and figuring out what's on tonight, seeing what sports are on for our summer evenings to kick back and relax. Hey man, you want to do something tonight?
Yeah, I'm down. What do you want to do?
You want to watch a game?
I'm down. What's on tonight?
But that brings us to our first problem. Where did all the sports go? It's been months since the NFL ended its season, and even longer since college football ceased as well. College basketball's long been to an end. NBA and the NHL, the America's best basketball and hockey leagues alike, have both recently ended their off seasons. European soccer is long gone, almost an afterthought. As sports watchers, what do we have left for the summer? Is there anything to pique our interest on a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or Sunday night? Nothing really comes to mind right off the bat. No one's going to sports bars to watch anything. No one's getting together to watch a great big event for sports. So, where did they go? I want to go on a search. I'm setting out to figure out what sports watchers are really missing out on, or if they're even missing out at all. What sports are still on? What do people still have to watch in afternoons and evenings when they really want to get their sports fix in? Is it even worth watching? How is it publicized to us? How does the sports media of today build the interest in these summer sports during this so-called sports drought? What do we all still have as avid fans of sports worldwide? So, let's investigate. Let's start with baseball. On 162 games, 30 teams, 2 divisions. It's a sport that spans across the spring, summer, and fall months. Sometimes playing 4 to 5 games back to back, day after day after day. Very easy to attend. Colloquially known as America's pastime. One of America's most famous sports. It goes on all summer long. But I feel like personally, I haven't really known too much about it. Maybe that's because I don't follow the sport as much, but that's why I decided to get someone who does, who's got far more interest than myself, for a small little interview on a little bit more about baseball. So, I am here with...
Trent Belitz.
All right, Trent, thanks so much for agreeing to talk a little bit. So, I just wanted to kind of ask, I know you're pretty into baseball. You played a little bit of baseball growing up. An avid Astros fan from Houston. I just kind of wanted to ask, how involved are
how would you, I guess on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your involvement with the team lately over the summer?
Like into the Astros.
Yeah, into the Astros and into baseball in general.
I would rate myself probably like an 8 or probably around an 8. Yeah, like I watch most of the games unless I'm like working or doing something else with friends, and then I keep up with fantasy baseball throughout the season. So I stay a little more involved than I probably should.
Okay, interesting. What would you say like your main means of like involvement is? Like if you have like I don't know like MLB TV or you said like fantasy or kind of sort of how do you stay most like in tune with the Astros and with the MLB as a whole?
Yeah, so in Houston, I just have the local. I think it's AT&T Southwest channel where all the games are on, and then I'm just like reading articles during the day, just on the MLB app or ESPN app whenever I get bored. And then I've been to I think 2 games this summer, and I'll just like text other friends that are into it and also fans, and we'll just kind of like make jokes and just talk about the games and stuff.
Okay, so my what I've gathered is you would consider yourself more of an like above average or more than averagely involved fan in baseball.
Yes, I would.
Okay. Do you think other people that maybe aren't as involved with baseball are kind of missing out or maybe are kind of like searching for more sports to watch? Like, do you think baseball's for them or is that just kind of like a niche sport really that it takes like a really specialized fan to get into?
Um, that's a tough question. Like, because I have a passion for it, so I would say they're missing out. But I do understand that a lot of my passion comes from playing my whole life. I think that's kind of led me to be so into it, watching it all the time. A lot of people see it as more boring and laid back and a bit of a slower game, which MLB is trying to fix by the new pitch clock rule. I don't know if you know too much about that, but
I do actually,
there's
yeah.
yes, I don't know the exact amount of time, but they're trying to speed up the pace. Um, but yeah, I don't think it's for everybody. Not everyone enjoys it, so I'm not gonna say they're missing out or pressure people to come watch a game with me, but I do really love it myself.
Okay. I guess one more kind of related question. So, in the summer, baseball is one of like the only things that's really on. We don't have football or basketball, NBA or college. Like a lot of stuff is kind of out. So do you think baseball kind of helps fill that void in the summer? Is the summer when you turn to baseball, or are you just like a year-round baseball involved guy? And like in the fall, for example, when basketball and football is on, like do you find yourself deviating away from that sport, or are you just baseball all in all the time?
I'd say all in all the time. It's a little bit harder at school just because we're a little bit busier and I don't have the local channel. But I'm still following it the whole time from the start to the end just because at the start you miss it. It hasn't been on in a while. The end, October, it's still my favorite sport. I'm still watching every single game just because it's the playoffs and the Astros, the team I care about, have been doing really well, going really far every year. So it's been pretty easy for me to want to keep up. But I do see your point about the gap. Like I see from like the Super Bowl to opening day of baseball as a gap for me, just because I don't watch as much of the NBA.
Sick, dude. Thank you. I really appreciate those answers.
Well, there you have it. Summer baseball, spoken about by a true involved fan. Let's move to the next sport on my list, golf. Golf tournaments happen almost weekly through the spring and all the way up through the summer, including PGA tournaments, LIV tournaments, Opens, Masters, you name it. Almost every weekend from Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Tournaments featuring some of the best players in the world gather in different locations across America to play 18 holes on a beautiful golf course. Each weekend we're gifted with some special moments, like holes in one. Normally thought of as a boring sport, let's hear about why it's not so boring from our very own Adrian.
So, very unfortunately, my expert golfer Adrian was not able to join us for our interview this evening. Something came up, work within the family, not sure. But I did send him a few of the questions beforehand, so he was able to type me up a few of his responses. So very thankful for him for that. What I'm going to do is kind of sort of mock simulated interview. I'll ask myself the questions and I'll answer as if I was Adrian. Just you can kind of get a sort of view on what he thinks of golf as someone that plays a lot and knows a good amount about it. So first thing I asked him, just to lead it off, I asked him how much golf he watches over the summer and how he stays involved with it. And he says, yeah, he watches it all the time. It's on virtually every single weekend, 4 whole days, starting Thursday and going through Sunday. So Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Tee times usually begin at 7 a.m. in the morning and go on some tournaments, depending on your time zone, and go to about 3 to 4 in the afternoon. Because all these tournaments start with almost 100 players, and they're all just playing and going through their holes, and they progress through the weekend, through obviously Sunday, or I guess not so obviously, Sunday, which they call their championship day. And that's when all the golfers that have made the progressive cuts will go on and pull themselves ahead and win whatever tournament that may be. He says it's really fun to watch the growth of the players and golfers over the course of the season. Because I think, he said it earlier when we were talking, these tournaments begin February-ish, kind of late winter, and they go through the summer and up into the fall. And so over time, you see the same golfers compete week after week after week against each other. And you get to get involved with their stories and watch their growth and progression as they compete through each other and all of their highs and lows. And golfers of all ages, he says too, is really cool to see out there. You have the same guys that were competing 20 years ago, still competing today and at the highest level, competing for championships, finishing, getting their top 10s and whatnot. And then you have your young guns that are fresh and new to the golf scene, showing up and doing incredible things. So that was most of his answer to that. I then asked him about golf in terms of social media, just broad stroke. Tell me about golf social media presence. What does that do? What does that do for you? And he says golf has a very awesome social media presence as a whole. He says accounts like the PGA have separate media accounts on like Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, even Facebook, and they post content all the time of all the best shots, all the best, scores, stories, and whatnot, and really help keep the fans up to date for just golf, of which there's a lot to cover with all the different players. I then kind of switched and progressed and asked him, why don't other people watch it as much? I said typically people just kind of see golf as a boring game that your dad watches on the couch and just sits around and does nothing. And I kind of asked him his opinion on that. He says, yes, he understands that because it's a slow-paced game and people don't always play a lot. But he said that's fine. To him, he gets his enjoyment because it's a relaxing sport and you don't always need the hype. He says you can just turn it on the TV on a Friday afternoon when you're finishing up work, schoolwork, working out, whatever you're doing, and you can watch and relax and see these players hit golf balls at the highest level, and you don't always have to get really worked up with it. And it's a really cool sport to just watch on a very relaxing basis. And kind of as a follow-up, I asked what he kind of recommends to people on the outside looking in. How do people get involved? How does golf associations like the PGA influence more involvement, more eyes in their sport, more popularity, especially in the summertime when they have virtually no other competitors, seemingly, right? He says his first answer was just go play. He said it's a great sport to play with other people, and it's a great pastime. It gets you more interested in the sport itself. If you go and play and figure out that your swing is really bad, what's the best way to figure that out? Go watch the best guys do it. Try and emulate that. And kind of relating back to my social media question, he says there's an endless volume of tips and tricks and people that are willing to help you online improve your game. He says I see probably about 20 to 30 golf-based like tip content a day, and that really helps him with different aspects of his swing, his game, his strategy, and everything sort of surrounding that. So, yeah, I hope this interview made a little sense, me bouncing back and forth between myself, but that's what Adrian has to say about golf.
Next up, I was hoping to talk about America's very own finest soccer league, the MLS. We have our very own team in Austin, very recently founded, Austin FC, seemingly growing in popularity, especially with soccer being such a worldwide and world-renowned sport, featuring the World Cup, European soccer, you name it. Unfortunately, I could not even find anyone that was knowledgeable enough to interview about this sport. So, I'm going to take that as an answer in its own. I don't think the MLS can draw enough American and or casual interest in order to be of any value of summer sporting. But my next subject of sport is one that I think can. It's one of my personal favorite sports. It's on most every weekend, year-round, and never fails to fill you with excitement and opportunity. Let me introduce to you the UFC. Almost every weekend, Commissioner Dana White puts on bouts of fights of about 10 to 15 in length, spanning over the course of evenings from about 7 p.m. to about midnight. Always filled with high-packed action, including striking, grappling, and a mix of everything in between. MMA is perfect for fighting fans who love to watch a little bit of violence, hinted with art across all of its spheres. The excitement is off the charts. For those of you that don't believe me, you can just let these hands do the talking for me.
As a big fan and avid watcher of the sport, I'm going to be interviewing myself and talking about my own views on the UFC and mixed martial arts world as a summer sport. I'm going to take kind of the same questioning route, asking myself how much I watch over the summer. I watch virtually every single weekend. It's on almost every single Saturday, maybe with the exception of one or two. And it's the way they kind of break it down is they'll do 2 or 3 pay-per-view fights a month, like kind of smaller, like organizational fights, and their big championship fights in big stadiums. Those will be pay-per-view about once a month. And so I'm watching that like pretty much every Saturday I get the chance to. I'm a big fan of it, so I consider myself to have a good amount of knowledge on this. And it's very similar to golf in the sense that you have like there's a lot of people in, like a lot of fighters, and every weekend you see a new fighter, because fighters, they fight maybe twice a year, 6-month layoffs to train, recover from any injuries they sustained in their past fights, and every single time you're seeing someone new, and you're seeing maybe your new favorite guy, a prospect, a young guy, an old guy, and you're watching every single person fight and learning so much about it every single time. In terms of UFC social media, what does UFC social media do, or just MMA world social media do in order to spur engagement? I think they do a lot. So obviously highlight clips, so easy to generate views from. guys have maybe once a month a really cool knockout or a kick and whatnot. That's super cool. But beyond that, a lot of fight social media comes with promotion of their big events and their fights in order to get those pay-per-view buys, because that's where a lot of their money comes from, and their ticket sales. A lot, I'd say about like 80% of their media goes into promotion, whether that's long forward announcements for a fight 5 months in advance. Maybe they'll do interviews talking about, I can't wait to beat this guy up, and I don't like this guy, or I really respect this guy and I can't wait to do this fight. And especially leading up to fights too, they'll do press conferences where they have all the fighters come in and sit across, and they have the fans ask questions. The commissioner, president Dana White will ask questions, and they kind of build interest in the fights. And even on YouTube, the week leading up to like a big fight, they'll do what's called a UFC embedded, where they have camera crews follow around fighters in their lead ups to the fight. So in their homes, when they make their food and whatnot, they get their last training sessions in, when they're cutting weight, and that kind of gives you a peek on the inside scoop of a lot of these athletes' lives, which you don't get to see a lot. So I think they do a lot in terms of social media and generating engagement and maintaining engagement, which is huge. In terms of why don't other people watch the UFC as much? Why is that not as popular of a sport maybe? And I think just straight up probably has to do with the violence aspects, which is a completely fair and understandable reason not to watch it. Like, seeing people get hurt, bloody, people have compared it to human cockfighting in the past. Like, it's a very very violent, and just it's a straight up sport based on violence. People get hurt, and that's just the way it is. But my, not rebuttal, I'd say, but my next question is, how would I recommend getting more people to watch in the summer? What would I recommend for people that don't want to watch? And what I would say is to train, join a gym. Not only is it great physical exercise, but you gain a new appreciation for the art that goes into mixed martial arts. Striking, punching, kicking, that's all an art. Very refined technique. Grappling, jiu-jitsu takes a full decade to be, even more, to become a master of. People do this their whole lives, and there's still people that are better. There's always someone that's going to be better than you. And training yourself and kind of increasing your knowledge on such a deep wealth of, besting an opponent that's across from you in physical fisticuffs combat, really grows your interest. And it's a hard sport not to like once you really try to understand it on a deeper level. So that's my inside scoop on the UFC.
Another topic of peculiar sports interest is sports gambling. You can bet on just about anything these days. Maybe not quite legal in Texas, but they found loopholes around that too. You could put together fantasy teams with money, put players together, parlays, maybe even use a VPN to do it out of state. I mean, if there's a will, there's a way. One of my good and best friends for a long time is a very avid sports gambler, so I decided to have him on to talk a little bit about how his involvement in sports betting keeps him going and involved in the summer.
And so, who am I here with?
You are here with Vishnu Raghunath.
Awesome. So, Vish, I kind of wanted to ask a few things, just, no subject, no kind of backstory. So obviously, I know you're a little bit into sports gambling. Um, it's something you do somewhat every now and then. I know you know about it more than sort of myself and kind of the people we hang around. So what kind of got you into sports gambling?
The thing that got me into sports gambling was just growing up. One of my main hobbies was just watching sports. So coming with that, you just get a lot of sports knowledge. And when I found out there was a way that I could possibly make money off of it, then I kind of just seized that. And used everything that I knew in order to make educated guesses or kicks on certain games.
Okay. Do you think your hobby of sports gambling keeps you more involved with sports than it may otherwise if you per se didn't gamble as much?
Oh, 100%. Before I started sports gambling, the main two sports I watched every day, or anytime sports were on, would either be basketball or football. But when I started gambling on sports, I noticed I was actually hitting some good hockey bets, which got me really into hockey. Which, personally, I would say hockey is my second favorite sport to watch now over basketball, but I would still put football at the top. It just kind of expands, what all you can get interested in. And since certain sports aren't year round, you start to appreciate other sports when it's their turn in the spotlight, like baseball in the summer, or hockey in the fall and winter when basketball is really slow.
Okay, that was actually kind of a good lead on to my next question. So, obviously, the summer you can call it a little bit of a drought or like a downtime for some of the more popular sports. We haven't had football for months, for example. Basketball's off, hockey's in the off season, no European soccer. Um, do you think, I guess, kind of like you said, like sports gambling, obviously you still keep it going in the summer. Does that kind of keep you more involved with sports, like during certain off seasons and during, I guess, periods of greater sport inactivity?
Oh, 100%. Especially when American baseball is the one major sport going on in the summer. As a Rangers fan, we haven't been good for the past 12 years. And when I saw that we actually have some potential this year, I started betting on a couple Rangers games, which got me paying attention to other teams as well. I mean, granted, my knowledge of baseball is still greater than an average person's, even before the baseball season started. I still knew all the stars, but actually getting to bet on Rangers games kind of got me exposed to other teams and their players too, to the point where I don't just know their superstars. I also just know their B tier, their C tier guys, and I know who performs well and who doesn't perform well, and it helps you carry into those conversations where the All Star game's coming up. So I really know that who actually deserves to be in the All Star game, or who might even get demoted to the minor leagues past the All Star game as teams start preparing for the playoff push.
Very interesting. That makes a lot of sense. I guess one other little nugget of picking your brain here. How do you, or do you at all, kind of utilize sports and sort of like sports media, like social media, Twitter, Instagram, or articles, ESPN, and whatnot? Does that sort of influence your gambling, like activism, or like how much you gamble, or how little? Like, what kind of effect does, the wide world of internet in the sports world have on your gambling or any aspect of your gambling?
Oh, it affected my gambling in two major ways. I mean, living in the year 2023 now, social media is pretty much how we take in a lot of our sports because we don't have time to watch every single game. I might go to Twitter to check out the highlights, or the ESPN Instagram page might post certain stats or certain videos on there. So that's one aspect, and the other aspect is the reason why I got so into gambling was because I stumbled upon gambling Twitter, which was a certain subsection niche of Twitter where certain figureheads, they would post their plays and they would post their analysis, and it kind of turned into a big community where people would collaborate together to release a single play based off of the research they've both done. And sometimes if I'm just feeling lazy, I kind of just resort to trusting them, and I just kind of take the play anyways, even though I don't know the two teams. If it's a Saturday night, I'm staying in. I'm not doing anything. I might just throw $10 on a game that some guy on Twitter told me to throw $10 on.
Okay. That makes total complete sense.
So, what do you know? Sports gambling is a good way to keep yourself in touch and up to date with the sports happenings of the day and in the summer. I couldn't help but focus on Vishnu's fixation on his social media influence and how that really impacted his growth within the sports gambling world and helped him find a community. I wanted to explore this more, so I got my good friends Jackson and Jackson, neither of whom are very super involved in sports, or at least as hyperfixated as the others I've interviewed so far, and get their opinion on how sports media impacts them and their sports viewing.
I'm here with Jack Van Horn.
And
Jackson Bettner.
Hi, Jackson and Jackson. I just wanted to ask a couple questions. Haven't told y'all too much about what this is about, but just some very broad stroke, just to get a couple opinions. So, would y'all consider yourselves relatively avid fans and/or watchers of sports?
Yeah, for sure. Not really.
Not really. What are y'all's favorite sports to watch and/or play or do follow whatever in your meantime?
I do like to watch a lot of MMA whenever it's on. Usually I can't afford it, so it's half and half. And then I like to watch a lot of soccer, kind of World Cup, FIFA type.
Okay.
And I really like watching baseball. I'm a huge Cardinals fan, and then college football as well.
St. Louis Cardinals.
Yes, sir.
All right. So, I'll kind of come to a little personal crossroads, right? Like, I'm a big sports fan too. I like watching whatever's on, but I feel like I've noticed in the summer lately, like, there's just not really as much. Like, I don't have my football to watch. Like, I haven't had basketball in a while. NBA is kind of like in its free agency. So is hockey and no European soccer. I was just kind of wondering if y'all have sort of faced the same thing, or y'all kind of running into the same troubles.
Yeah, definitely. I kind of find myself in an awkward in-between, getting ready for my own sport, and then just kind of trying to be active in... I mostly get entertained by my little brother. This is their off-season for football, so I get to help watch him prepare for his season. So it's more of a not publicized entertainment for myself.
Okay. What about you, Other Jackson?
Yeah, no, I definitely feel that in terms of waiting for the college football season to start up in the fall. But there's some recruitment and stuff to follow. But obviously that's not as big of a deal as actually being in season. Then I also have baseball as well, which is right in the middle of the season. So
Right.
definitely not as bad.
So, obviously, for those like myself, and I guess you both that are kind of looking for your daily or weekly fix of sports, like, I kind of tend to just turn to my sports media that I have at my disposal. Like, what do y'all sort of use to keep yourself up to date? Like, Jackson, you mentioned recruitment with like football and whatnot, and then, you
I
know,
like to keep up with Dave Campbell's on it's like Dave Campbell's high school football, something like that.
okay, what is that?
They do like recruitment following, and during the season they do game time updates and like live, some cool stuff. And then yeah, that's about it. Other than going through Instagram and scrolling through sports accounts and seeing what recruits are hot and being picked up. Yeah.
I love watching Late Kick with Josh Pate. He's a great like college football media personality. And then on top of that, just like on through recruiting and like the 24/7 sports, like those YouTube channels are pretty good.
Okay. Jackson, I want to circle back to one of the very first things you mentioned. Fights. Can't afford them, right?
Yeah.
Like $70-$80. I hate buying them too. I don't know about you, but I can become, or not become, I've just heard around the grapevine of these things we like to call like illegal streaming sites that'll do it for like virtually free. Yeah, it might be like a 2-minute delay, I think, is what I've seen from it, but you know, I feel like personally, if I were to want to use that, it'd be a good little outlet for me to go to in order to watch my fights that I can't afford, you know. So,
See,
you ever heard of those?
Yes, I've heard of them. I've used those before. But I find that the best way to get around breaking the law is to not break the law and instead go into certain bars. A lot of Irish pubs like to publicize that they stream all of their fights and everything. I remember when I was a senior in high school, that's where we watched the Israel Adesanya fight, was at a Moe's Irish pub. Stayed there till about 11 o'clock and just kind of sat around and hung out. And it was definitely a lot cheaper. I think we maybe spent $30 on a meal instead of $50 on a fight. And yeah, it was cool.
All right. So, what have we learned from all of this? So, what do we have? Is there a true drought? Even if there are sports on, is it enough to draw those outside of the superfan viewership? What is the average sports watcher
actually do and legitimately have. In my opinion, at the end of the day, the summer is only as much of a drought as you want to make it. Whether you want to hyper-fixate on a couple sports, like myself with mixed martial arts, Adrian with golf, Trent with baseball, or if you want to learn, if you're the average sports viewer, get out there. We covered a lot. There's plenty. It's like that old phrase, the world's your oyster. World of sports is no different. And we have sports media at our disposal as well. Everyone's on it. Go look up new sports. Figure out what's on. Pique your interest in something different. Be a learner. Learn to watch. Learn to play. Learn to enjoy. And learn to understand. You have every tool at your disposal. Get out there and do it. Think there's a drought? You tell me.